The Indianapolis Colts will kick off the 2024 season this week with heightened expectations. So, how will Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, and the rest of the team fare this year? And is a return to the playoffs in Indy's future? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague at Horseshoe Huddle and co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, we made it. It is week one officially. In less than a week, 6 days, the Indianapolis Colts will be on the field taking on the Houston Texans. It's been a long offseason. There really hasn't been any drama this offseason, thank the Lord. But I think we're all ready for real football to be back.
Yeah, and look, man, it's been a massive culmination of, off season right after you missed the playoffs, and it's just a long wait. You're talking about January, February, March, just so many months. So Colts fans, we're even ready for this. We're sick and tired of talking about preseason football and training camp this and training camp that. We're ready for some meaningful stuff.
Exactly. So tonight we are going to give our final predictions for the Indianapolis Colts this season. We're going to go through and give our individual stats for the likes of Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr. What's rookie Leatu Latu going to do this year? Adonai Mitchell. We're going to run through and give our predictions for all of that. We're going to talk about what we think the Colts record is going to be and what they can do if they make the postseason. And then, of course, we'll update you on the injuries, the latest news. Like always, Truitt getting us off to a hot start with the $2 super sticker. Truitt, thank you so much for all of your support. As always, it really means the world to us. And then we have another one from Yim. Yim said, my wife and I scored tickets to week 1, row 3 Colts sideline. I'm stoked. Yim, first of all, thank you so much for the super chat, buddy. Really, really appreciate it. And hey, congrats, man. That was our excellent seats. You are going to have a fantastic time. Lucas Oil is going to be rocking on Sunday. Yim, thank you so much for all of your support. And hey, if I see you at the game, I'll be there on Sunday. Hey, make sure to holler out. Would love to meet you there. Sean Contright is here as well. Go Colts, he says. Nathan, finally caught a show. Let's go. Happy Labor Day to you and your families. Happy Labor Day to you, Nathan. Happy Labor Day to everybody that's tuning in tonight, listening to our show. We've got a $10 super chat from Spooks Hill Joe. The super chats are flying here. It must be week 1 because everybody is ready to go.
You guys are ready for some football, aren't you?
Drake's got a new mug. Drake is guzzling down a beer. We're gonna get Drake hammered.
It says upon further review, I'd like another beer.
We're gonna get Drake hammered before we even start the first segment. Thanks a lot, Spooks Hill Joe. Really, really appreciate it. The GOAT Logan Schmidt is in the house as well. Good to see you. And guys, on Thursday night after Drake and I finish up, I think it's at 9:00. Drake and Logan Schmidt are going live on having a Twitter Spaces. So while you're watching the Chiefs and the Ravens, hop on their Twitter Spaces or X Spaces, I guess it's called now. But Logan, shout out to you, buddy. You are the GOAT. Paul Wilson will also be in the end zone. He can't wait as well. So yeah, so football is back, guys, and we can't be more excited. But if you haven't done so already, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on _SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or when Noah goes live with the Shoehorn Podcast. You never want to miss us. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe. Give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you and Drake. Let's dive right into it, buddy. We're going to give our Colts predictions for the 2024 season. Usually I don't like to give individual stats because predictions, I should say, because it's just so hard to it's really hard to kind of, guess what's going to happen. We can give a guess of who's going to possibly win a game and how they're going to do, but individual stats are going to be really hard to do. But hey, that's what's going to make it fun. And for some of these, I'm interested to see what you have, Drake, because I feel like in a few of these areas, we can differ quite a bit on how we see things going.
Oh yeah. And that's the beauty of like the this time of the NFL season is you're just kind of like going based off of what you've seen in the preseason and what you've seen during training camp and heard and read about. So I'm really intrigued, especially to get into some of these rookies. And really, Anthony Richardson is still kind of a rookie. Only played 4 games last year. So.
Exactly. And let's talk about Anthony Richardson. Obviously, coming into his second full-time season, but really only had 4 starts last year. But he is the unquestioned guy, and if he stays healthy, it could be a really good season for number 5. But I think when we've tried to communicate this, especially over the past few weeks, and after that that showing against the Cincinnati Bengals, where he showed a lot of good, but there was some bad too, that it's just going to be an up and down season, and that's normal for a young quarterback. So if you're expecting Anthony Richardson to go out there, throw for 4,000 yards, run for 1,000 yards, and have 50 total touchdowns, you might want to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's still only got 4 NFL starts, and they were at the very front of last year. So this dude has not played meaningful football on an NFL level in a really long time. So, I mean, don't expect him to be super duper perfect and crisp and just, I mean, he's going to make some mistakes out there, but rest assured, he's got enough explosiveness and he's got a play caller that knows how to use that against the defense that he's going to make some great plays as well. So.
Exactly. So Drake, how do you see this rookie season? How do you see the second season playing out for Anthony Richardson? Let's just dive right into it. What are your stat predictions for number 5 this season? And we're assuming that these guys are going to stay healthy the entire year. Too hard to predict with injuries, but assuming Anthony Richardson is out there starting for 17 games with the Colts this year, what do you see his stat line looking like?
Okay, so I just now finished. Okay, so yeah, all 17 games played, I think you're going to see a rush-heavy approach. All right, but I do think you're going to see a lot of explosiveness from the completions that he gets on the field, because whether they're short or deep, he's got receivers that can make yards after the catch too. So you've got to factor that in. 277 out of 458 completions. That's right on 60%, which by NFL standards is still pretty inaccurate, but he's going to get there, okay? But don't ever expect Richardson to be like 70%. I'm just saying, okay? He's a running quarterback, athletic guy. But 23 touchdown passes, I still think he's going to throw 14 interceptions. I think some of those balls are going to sail, and they're going to Josh Allen, man. You're going to be marveled by that arm talent, but some of them they're just going to go over the receiver's head. But 120 rushes, that's about like 6 or 7 rushes a game for 687 yards. It's like 5.7 per carry and 9 rushing touchdowns, which 32 all-purpose touchdowns from your quarterback. Let's go. You'll take that in a year.
Oh yeah, that's not a bad season at all. So,
no.
I'm pretty close to that, because I do think that there's going to be ups and downs with Anthony Richardson. You're going to have games where he looks great. There's other games where he's not going to look so great. There's going to be games where he torches defense, or he has a really big game through the air. Other games, it's going to be primarily with his legs. So I was pretty close. I didn't do completions or rush attempts like you did, Drake, but I think that Anthony Richardson is going to throw for around 3,179 yards. I have him at 22 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So I'm a little lower on the touchdowns and a little lower on the interceptions as well. But as a runner, I think that he is going to get around 726 yards. I think that the running game is going to be prevalent, and while you could see him 6 to 7 times a game running the football, like you said, Drake, and some of those he's going to break off for big gains. 626 yards on the ground, and I am going to go 9 rushing touchdowns. So altogether, I have 29 total touchdowns and at about 3,900 yards total out of Anthony Richardson if you combine his air yards and his ground attack. So we're pretty close in that regard, but altogether, again, I think that if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, he has the potential to get close to, if not surpass, 30 touchdowns, 30 total touchdowns on the season.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's the ability to use his legs. It's the ability to stretch a defense and hit any part on the field with the football. But he's got to just shore up the gimme throws. Okay, just try to make sure that some of those preseason balls where they sailed over Mitchell's head, a lot of times those are going to be intercepted. So you just got to try to make sure that chemistry. I know I can't remember who it was. I think it was Kirk Herbstreit mentioned the inaccuracy issue with Kylan Granson. It's not that. It was more of like a communication thing. So hopefully you get that sort of stuff, squared away, and he'll be fine. All right. He's going to have some nicks and some bruises, man. But the finished product, people, it's going to be pretty great. I think by the end of the season, he's going to look good.
I am confident that by the end of the season, you're going to say this is the Colts guy for the foreseeable future. I want to give a shout out to Paul Wilson for the $5 super chat. Paul, thank you so much for all of your support, brother. Paul says, I think Taylor is going to be the Colts MVP. The Colts pass rush should help the secondary control that clock, and the Colts will beat the Texans. So yeah, I mean that's a good strategy to have. The running game or the running attack was definitely something the Colts used against the Texans last year. Drake and I are going to preview that entire matchup on Thursday. We're going to have the entire episode dedicated to Colts Texans. Going to get a really fun episode. And Paul, thank you so much for all of your support. Drake, let's turn our attention to that ground game in Jonathan Taylor. And all we've heard all offseason is that not only Chris Ballard but Shane Steichen as well think that Jonathan Taylor is going to have a huge year. And I think he's going to pick up kind of where he left off in 2021 to an extent. Do I think he's going to rush for 1,800 yards? No, but I think he's going to reestablish himself as one of the best running backs in the NFL.
Yeah, and the thing is, now you get a chance to have arguably the most dynamic. He is the most dynamic quarterback you've had. And you get a guy for a second straight season. I know that he didn't play with Richardson but 2 snaps, but they've been communicating, they've been connecting, they've been going over tape, they've been working on things. They had a chance to actually do some stuff in the preseason. So I'm excited to see that combination. And really, I know everyone's excited to see what it's going to do for Richardson. How about what it's going to do for Jonathan Taylor? He's going to erupt at times.
Yeah, I agree. So for my stat prediction for Jonathan Taylor, I'm going to have him getting 1,248 yards on the ground with 13 rushing touchdowns. I think both of those are going to be close to the league lead in both of those categories. And then receiving, I think he's also going to add another 279 yards receiving to go along with 2 receiving touchdowns. So altogether, you're looking at close to 1,500 yards total for Jonathan Taylor with 15 touchdowns on the year. I really do think that this is going to be a huge year for number 28.
Yeah, and my stat line is kind of similar. I think at times, though, there are going to be games where you're going to see stuff similar to what you saw with him against the Bills with Carson Wentz when he just ripped off 5 tuds. Okay, You're going to see games like that, and there might be 2 games like that. And those are going to add up with the touchdowns, which is why I had to preface that because it might be kind of crazy. But 285 rushes, 1,254 rushing yards. So that's about 4.4 per clip. So I don't think he's going to get the ridiculous workload that he did in 2021, but he's going to have impactful rushes. This dude's going to get goal line work, though. Okay, and with Richardson there, he's going to get so many opportunities to just find a lane. Give me 16 rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
Give me an absolutely ridiculous boatload of rushing touchdowns. I do think he's going to kind of just get 29 catches, about 200 yards, maybe a receiving touchdown or something. But people, we're giving our realistic predictions. We're not over here trying to hype these guys up past what they're going to do on the field or what we as analysts and reporters and writers have felt like they've done. We're actually trying to be as objective as possible. And me and Andrew have been high on this combo ever since Anthony Richardson was drafted, just like many have. So.
Yeah, and if Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, for instance, if they hit my stat line of 9 rushing touchdowns and 13 touchdowns, that's 22 rushing touchdowns for the Indianapolis Colts this year, and that doesn't even account for the one-off. So if Trey Sermon gets a touchdown here and there, or Tyler Goodson gets a touchdown here and there, so I really do think that this ground attack is going to be how the Colts lead this offense this year. It's going to run through Jonathan Taylor still, through Anthony Richardson. It's going to be a ground offense, and there's going to be explosive shot plays kind of thrown in there throughout. Stats Matt is late again. Gosh dang it. I don't understand.
Not too late, though.
What are we paying this guy for? That's why we don't pay him at all. But hey, better late than never. Better late than never for Stats Matt. And guys, I did want to say this as well. As Drake and I are giving our stat predictions, throw your stat predictions in the chat as well. We'd love to see those stat predictions from you guys as well. But Drake, let's talk about the wide receiver group, who Anthony Richardson is going to be throwing to, really. And I do think that we are going to see kind of a different things are going to be a little bit different with Anthony Richardson in there. Obviously, you're not going to see as many probably short completions. You're going to see more explosive plays. Maybe the total catches for these wide receivers might be down as well. However, I think there's going to be one player in particular that takes a really big jump this year in just total targets and his involvement in the offense, and that's Josh Downs. I mean, Josh Downs last year had almost 70 catches as a rookie. Drake, it wouldn't surprise me if that number jumps up by about 20 this season with Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback.
Oh yeah, I mean, so we're going with the predictions for Josh Downs first.
Just talking about the wide receivers.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Josh Downs. You're obviously, we'll have to cover Michael Pittman. Okay, you're talking about a guy that is probably still going to lead the Colts in targets. I don't think he's going to surpass. I think he had I don't have it up in front of me. I think he had 109 catches last year. I don't think he's going to go over that. I think they're going to run the ball way more, and Pittman is going to still be your volume guy, but we're talking like also a downfield threat. Okay, he's going to be used in every facet that they can make him available. So I'm also pretty excited for what they're going to do. I know it's not a sexy name anymore, but Alec Pierce, man. I want to see a full year of Alec Pierce with Anthony Richardson. That's what I want to see. He's also got the same coach for the second straight year who really wants to use him out there as more than a blocker. So I think that there's a lot of different ways you can attack a defense. And, of course, A.D. Mitchell as well. You can use him in multiple ways, outside slot, a lot of different ways to attack a defense.
Yeah, I agree there. So Drake, let's take a look at this. So I'm going to just run through the stat lines. We were originally going to do the top 3 wide receivers for the Colts, but in my opinion, Drake, Mitchell and Pierce are so close. I'm going to give kind of my stat lines for both of those guys. So okay. Pittman, I think Pittman is going to be his normal self. I think he's still going to receive the bulk of the targets this year. And while he had 109 catches last year, if he didn't miss that Falcons game, Drake, he probably has around 116 catches on the year last year at about 1,200 yards. I'm going to go a little bit lower than that on the catches. I think it's going to be around 107 catches. So I still think he goes over 100 catches, but I think the yards are going to be up because he's going to get the opportunity for more chunk plays. So I'm going to go 1,206 yards, and I'm also going 7 touchdowns for Michael Pittman. That's something that he said he focused on a lot this offseason, and he really wants to up his touchdowns. I think Shane Steichen is also going to make that a priority of using Michael Pittman more in the red zone and giving him more chances in the end zone as well. 107 catches, 1,206 yards, and 7 touchdowns for Michael Pittman Jr. I said Josh Downs is going to go up by around 20 catches, and he goes up by 20 catches in my prediction. 89 catches, 943 yards, so he's still going to get the kind of the quick wing closer to the line of scrimmage. There's going to be some deep shots in there, but 4 touchdowns. I think he goes from 2 to 4. Adonai Mitchell, I think, is going to be the one that produces the third most because I think by towards the end of the year, you are going to see Adonai Mitchell really take over that third wide receiver role in that X spot. 48 catches, 689 yards. It's averaging around 14.5 yards per catch and 4 touchdowns for Adonai Mitchell. And then Pierce just comes up real close to that. 40 catches for 612 yards and 3 touchdowns out of Alec Pierce. So I think when you incorporate all of that in there, that's going to be the bulk of the yardage for Anthony Richardson and this offense.
Yeah, and so I'm really close, especially when it comes to A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce. But like for Michael Pittman Jr., I actually have 88 receptions, but I have 1,358 receiving yards. Okay, so I've got some big plays, a lot of big plays for Michael Pittman, and I've got 6 touchdown receptions. And for Josh Downs, I've got 88 catches, about 880 yards, so about 10 yards per catch, because he's going to work out of the slot and get a lot of short catches for 3 touchdowns. Now, I think A.D. Mitchell is going to slightly, kind of like you said, he's just going to slightly outpace Alec Pierce when it comes to catches. because Pierce is just a better blocker. Okay, when they need a run play, especially if it's a sweep or if it's to the outside, any edge type play where they need a block on the outside, they're going to ask Pierce to do that. So he's probably going to out-snap Mitchell. But I'm right there with you. I think about 40 catches a piece for these guys, looking at about 4 or 5 touchdowns a piece, potentially. I really hope Alec Pierce, honestly, that's the realistic prediction. I hope Alec Pierce hits like 50 catches. That would be awesome. It's just really, really hard to see that when you haven't seen it in 3 years. You know what I mean? Or in 2 years, excuse me.
Yeah, especially when Josh Downs, Michael Pittman Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys are going to be receiving the bulk of the targets this year. Yim has another super chat. Thank you so much, Yim, for all of your support. And Yim is asking thoughts on the Fournette news, and would he be the 2? I assume you mean the number 2 running back. So we're going to talk about this later in the show, and we'll still talk about some other guys that ended up visiting the Colts. But it was reported today that Leonard Fournette did visit and did work out with the Indianapolis Colts. And honestly, Drake, I mean, it's a bigger name. That's why it caught the news. But if anything, if Leonard Fournette did sign with the Colts, it'd be probably what the same thing that the Dallas Cowboys did with Dalvin Cook. Leonard Fournette would end up starting on the practice squad for the Indianapolis Colts. Leonard Fournette doesn't know the offense. Leonard Fournette is not like he's been in camp, and he's probably needs to take a little bit of time to get into shape. I think what the Colts are doing is just, doing their due diligence and looking to add some depth at the running back position, because, Trey Sermon's had that hamstring, and while he has been practicing now, you only have one other running back on the practice squad in Evan Hull. So I think if the Colts did end up signing Leonard Fournette, it wouldn't be to the active roster. It would be to the practice squad to start out. And I really don't think that currently Trey Sermon is in danger of losing that running back 2 role. But what do you think?
I mean, I think that you could pretty much pair any running back with Anthony Richardson, a guy like Anthony Richardson. But yeah, I mean, I think that you'd be ridiculous to not at least take a look at Leonard Fournette. He's a former first-round pick. I think he was 4th overall. I mean, former 1,000-yard rusher, Super Bowl champion. I mean, he's got a lot of experience. So if you had to really go deep into your running back depth, you'd have to ask the question, is Evan Hull ready to be plucked from the practice squad, or do you want to go with a veteran like Leonard Fournette? So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's intriguing, especially with a guy, like I said, like Richardson, who you could pretty much put any running back with.
But it is been documented at this point, because they had interest in bringing Dalvin Cook in for a visit. Leonard Fournette did come in for a visit and work out. The Colts are definitely looking for depth at running back, and looking for a veteran depth piece at running back, probably to be on the practice squad. But yeah, really good question. Appreciate all of your support as always, and the super chat. You know that you're one of that Drake and I think you are definitely one of the good ones. So Drake, our next group, we're moving to the defensive side of the football now, and we got to look at this defensive line. This defensive line for the Indianapolis Colts, we've been talking about it all off season. They are primed and ready to get after the quarterback, and it all starts with what we think that the rookie Latu is going to do. So before we dive into that, want to give a shout out to the GOAT, Logan Schmidt. Appreciate you, brother, for all of your support, all of your kind words. And Logan says, thanks for all the off-season content, boys. Yeah, it's definitely been a grind.
It's long, dude.
It always is. Over these summer months, guys, I mean, we don't stop just because the Colts are off. We don't stop giving you content. And I know some of the positional previews can be a grind as well. But hey, we appreciate all of you guys coming in here, joining us every single Monday and Thursday to talk Colts football. Logan, you're one of the good ones as well. That's why I call you a GOAT. You're a good friend, and I better see you at one of these Colts games this summer, or this fall, I mean, as well. So let me know when you're in there at Lucas Oil Stadium. Thank you so much, Logan, for your support. But Drake, what do you think? I mean, I know we've talked about this before, but just give me your thoughts on the potential of this defensive line group for the Colts.
Oh, man. I mean, I think that the potential is, you have to go back to very briefly last year. All right. You had 51 sacks. All right. You hardly had any consistent pressure, though. Okay, so it was weird. You'd get all these sacks, Indy franchise, record-setting, year in that regard, but you can't get consistent pressure. I think that changes with Latu. I think that changes with consistency from DeForest Buckner. Grover Stewart, as long as he can, he will avoid suspension because it was ridiculous what he got suspended for. So you're going to have them. Then you've got constant motors like Tyquan Lewis. You've got Kwity Paye, who I do believe is a 10-plus sack talent. I really think he can do it. All he's done is just improve people. He's gone from 4 to 6 to 8.5 sacks. So he just keeps getting better. So I think that you're going to get – I think that you could break 51 sacks, man. I think you really can. And I think that you can also get consistent pressure on quarterbacks. We saw it during the preseason at times whenever Latu was out there. So I'm pumped. I cannot wait to see what Charlie Partridge has done with this group because, in brief, as we've said, they only felt that it was a coaching change that was needed. They didn't let any of these guys go. They kept them all, man. So, and they brought in Latu. They just felt like a coaching change was needed. So I'm pumped. I think that the sky's the limit for this group.
I do too. I really think that it's going to be a big year for this defensive line group. And Drake, you kind of hit it on the head there. Really, the sack numbers were up, but it was the consistent pressure that was lacking for the Colts. I think that's going to be there this year, not only with Latu, but I think Kwity Paye has really taken a jump, and that's been really a focus of his game as well, is to just be more consistent pressuring the quarterback. So when I look at the top 3 sack guys for the Colts this year, honestly, Drake, I'm going number 1, Kwity Paye. I think Kwity Paye ends up leading the Colts in sacks this year. Every single year he's been in the league, he's up to his sack total. He went from 4, then he went to 6. Last year was 8.5. I think he gets another 2 this year. I'm going 10.5 sacks for Kwity Paye, leading that group. Second, I'm going to go DeForest Buckner. With 8.5 sacks. I really think having an infused Kwity Paye that takes another leap and gets more consistent pressure on the quarterback, and then having Latu next to DeForest Buckner, he really hasn't had that type of pass rush talent next to him in his years in Indianapolis. I think that's really going to help DeForest Buckner. You're going to see him go out there. I've got another 8.5 sacks for DeForest Buckner, and he's actually going to be the leader in pressures, total pressures for the Colts, DeForest Buckner. Then then Latu. I think Latu gets 8 sacks on the season in his rookie year, and I think that Latu, those 8 sacks is going to be good enough for Latu to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think that he is going to have an insane amount of pressures for a rookie. I think that Latu is going to go out there and just really give the Colts a pass rushing presence they haven't had since Robert Mathis. Now, I'm not comparing him to Robert Mathis. He's got a long way to go for that.
Yeah.
But I think he's really going to take off. Everything that you've heard from the coaches, everything that you've heard from teammates, what DeForest Buckner has said about him really sticks out to me. And then just what I've seen with my own eyes out there, the movements that Latu does, the film that I've watched of Latu, I am super high on this kid, and I think he's going to go out there, get 8 sacks this year, and then I don't know when we'll see another season where Latu has less than double-digit sacks.
I love it. I love it because I think that he's going to hit the ground running. I remember watching a very, in brief here, against the Cincinnati Bengals specifically, there was a play where his coach, Coach Ed, isn't that who trains with Latu or trains him? Yeah, so he puts out a video on him working on just this little movement where he shimmies his shoulder so that it rubs the tackle's shoulder before he can get his arm up. And once his arm is up, Latu's already past him. It's insane how he just uses these little nuanced movements and he bends like a rubber band, man. He's just really difficult for tackles to deal with. So give me 7.5 sacks for Latu, which, dude, that's a solid rookie season. So give me 7.
Will Anderson had I think 7 last year when he was the 3rd overall pick. So up in that area is really good for a rookie pass rusher.
Yeah, and so I think to follow, I think you're going to have, let's see, I think Kwity Paye will have 9.5 sacks. I think the guy that's going to lead the Colts in sacks is DeForest Buckner. I think that he's going to have 11.5. I think he's going to absolutely tear I think he's going to tear a hole through offensive lines with a guy like Latu. He's just going to wear down offensive lines, man. And Latu can be moved into different spots here. So I think, Stewart, you're going to have about 4.5 sacks, but just constant run stops, tackles for losses, that fun stuff. For a guy like Tyquan Lewis, give me like 5.5 sacks or something like that, because I think he's going to see more action because Ebekom's out. But yeah, man, I really think that this is a team that actually, you know what, Pay could have like 10.5. I think that, let's go with that. Let's go with Buckner with 11.5 and Pay with 10.5, and then the rest of those guys, I think those are accurate, because I think this is a season where they could have 2 guys over 10.
Stats Matt saying the top 3 sack guys: Latu with 11, Buckner with 10, Quiddy with 9.5, and the team total of 53.5 to be sacks, 2.5 more sacks than they did last year. And if the consistent pressure is up too, it's going to be a menacing defensive line for the Indianapolis Colts. Let's take a step back, Drake, and go to that linebacker group. I really want to focus in on Zaire Franklin with this, and the big question is, does Zaire Franklin, last year he should have led the league in tackles, missed that one game against the Panthers. If he didn't miss that game, he would have led the league in tackles once again. Drake, what do you think? Do you think Zaire Franklin ends up leading the NFL in tackles? And what's the stat line for the longtime Colts captain there in the middle of the defense?
If we're going by averages here and we're going by 17 games, last season he averaged about 11.3 tackles a game. Okay. If he plays all 17 games, yes, he is going to have like 188 tackles. That's insane. So I think that he'll break it again, but he had 179 last year. So give me 184 this season. I think that I want to see him get 2 interceptions. I want to see a couple interceptions, just maybe even one interception, 2 forced fumbles. Let's just start to see some turnovers for us, because nothing wrong being a tackle machine, but you want to take that game up a notch, keep taking it up for 44. And then I think that you're still going to see, just constant movement across the field, maybe some improved coverage skills, but about maybe 1 or 1.5 sacks.
I'm right there with you. 183 tackles, 1.5 sacks. And I'm going to go 2 interceptions for Zaire Franklin in the middle. And I think more and more people are really starting to recognize Zaire Franklin as well. And I think that's going to help him at the end of the year in terms of recognition as well. But let's talk about the secondary now, Drake, because this could go so many different ways. You have a lot of young, unproven guys. You have some guys that in Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon that really what you're getting. Both those guys can turn the football over. Blackmon led the team in interceptions last year. I think Kenny Moore tied for second on the team in interceptions, or at least was second on the team in interceptions. But I think that's what's going to be crucial for this secondary is not only, are they going to perform, but they need to assist in turning the football over. I think the Colts have, ever since Shaquille Leonard kind of fell off and wasn't his normal self, this Colts team has really had an issue as far as forcing turnovers. Do you think that this secondary can kind of help get back to that, or at least have a bigger influence on forcing those turnovers, or do you see kind of what we saw last year in 2023, where only a couple of guys were out there and able to force the majority of the turnovers?
I think it's all going to be dependent upon Nick Cross, stepping up, and Julian Blackmon staying healthy all 17 games. I think if those 2 things can happen, and it's really Nick Cross's issue, it's communication. He's got the athleticism. He's got the ability. I saw him rip the football away from George Pickens. It was a fight for the football. He just tore it away. He's such a freak athlete. He's just got to be able to get it up here with the rest of his teammates. If that can happen, man, I really think that they can assist, because everyone talks about, well, the defensive front is there to help the defensive secondary. But guess what? It can go vice versa too, So I think that as long as Blackmon can stay healthy, man, and Cross can just put it together, you've got a formidable secondary, I think.
Interesting. So I do think that we are going to see a couple more guys increase in that turnover regard. It might take this defense being a little bit more aggressive, but I also think it's one guy in particular just kind of coming into his own and getting more snaps out there. But Drake, altogether, I think that Julian Blackmon is going to lead the team in interceptions once again.
Ooh,
I think Julian Blackmon, with how he has been a playmaker all off season, I'm predicting 5 interceptions out of Julian Blackmon. I think he really comes into his own as that playmaker in the middle of the secondary. And I think if he goes out there and gets 5 interceptions, you see Julian Blackmon get that long-term extension with the Indianapolis Colts. Then I got a tie for second on the team in terms of interceptions. I'm going Kenny Moore with 3. I think Kenny Moore gets 3 interceptions like he did last year. That playmaking ability from the slot continues. I think Kenny Moore ends up having himself a normal Kenny Moore type season. But Drake, I'm going with Juju Brents to get 3 interceptions this year. And here's why. Juju Brents last year, in only 9 games played, I think he had 9 games played, 8 starts, he had 1 interception. This is a big if, but if Julian Blackmon can stay healthy for all season long, or even the majority of the season, you would have to think that number at least doubles. He gets at least another interception to be 2. I'm going to go 3, because I think the more snaps that Juju Brents has in this secondary and throughout the season, the better he's going to be, the more acclimated he's going to get to the NFL game. And I think there's going to be some teams that try to test Juju Brents as well to see what he's made of. And I think he's going to make some of those quarterbacks pay. So I am going to go with 3 interceptions for Juju Brents to tie Kenny Moore for the second most on the team.
Wow, I love it. I think that as far as Julian Blackmon goes, I think you've got a lock for 3. At least. I think you got a lock for 3 interceptions. If he plays all 17 games, I mean, last season, I believe he had
4 last year.
He had 4 interceptions, but he had 88 tackles. So, I mean, you might be pushing 100 tackles if he can play all 17 games.
Yep.
And he also had 5 tackles for loss. So this is a run defender. This is a guy who takes the football away, underrated safety. The only reason he wasn't taken by somebody when he was out there available is because of his health issues. Okay, so I think that if he can stay healthy, holy crap, you've got yourself one hell of a football player. I think, though, that Juju Brents, if he can stay healthy, man, give me 4 interceptions from Juju Brents. He's got the length. He's got the zone coverage. He is a pass lane disruptor. He is way bigger after you've thrown the football than what you think. I mean, he can move really quickly. He has total understanding of where his body's at. I think you've also probably got like 2 or 3 forced fumbles because he showed that last year. You've got to, if he can put it together. I mean, hell, Pro Football Focus has been, saying that this guy's, the next breakout candidate if he can just put it together. I mean, a lot of people are high on Juju Brents. You just got to stay healthy and avoid freak injuries, like somehow getting your nose stepped on underneath your face mask by a football cleat, breaking it. Still don't get that. But my point is Juju Brents has got just serious potential. I think also about like 55 tackles. But, man, Kenny Moore, I think about 3 interceptions, 81 tackles, 11 passes defended. I'm really high on what Kenny Moore can do. But real quick, I do want to predict for Nick Cross. I think you're going to see probably like an interception, but I think you're going to see like 7 passes defended. I think you're going to see at least a little bit of improvement. Are you going to see vast improvement, starter quality improvement where you're not worried about the guy? I don't know, man. You just got to see. And guess what? You get Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell in 5 days. 6 days, whatever.
The tests start very early and they continue often throughout this Colts schedule. If you want to look at it, there's a lot of good wide receivers and a lot of good quarterbacks on the Colts schedule this season. Stats Matt, and this one is for Noah. Stats Matt says, I think Jones is the surprise. I think he gets 3 interceptions and holds quarterbacks to under 90 passer rating against. Remember, Jones allowed under a 57% completion percentage and a 98 passer rating last year. Now that's the thing. Jones is he's so interesting, Drake, because Jalen Jones, I think he's fantastic in coverage. but his ball skills is just, he had 0 interceptions last year. He had 0 forced fumbles, just no turnovers forced. And again, that could all change this year. Coming into his own, kind of getting, again, more reps, used to the NFL game. But if Jalen Jones can step it up and also bring a playmaking ability, man, that goes a long way, I think, to just solidifying Jalen Jones as a long-term starter. Because whether you like it or not, I mean, Juju Brents is going to get a longer leash than Jalen Jones simply because the Colts have a second-round pick invested in Juju Brents rather than a seventh-round pick in Jalen Jones. Not only is that going to be in place in the building, but outside the building, because fans will immediately look and see that 7th-round grade on Jalen Jones and knock him because of it. But if he can keep that same completion percentage down, the passer rating down as well, and then add a turnover forcing ability to his game, I think Jalen Jones would then secure that spot on the outside for the foreseeable future. I want to give a shout out to Paul Wilson again for another super chat, buddy. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for all of your support. And Paul says the Colts special teams look horrible in the preseason. Do you guys share the same concern as I do coverage wise? So I think it's interesting, Paul. I mean, I think that it's kind of, in my opinion, it's almost too early to tell because of this new kickoff rules. We saw it a couple of times in the preseason. I think in the preseason as well, teams were intentionally kicking it, short to try to practice these kickoffs. Do we see in the regular season where instead the teams are just kicking it out of the end zone and instead of risking a bigger return, the touchback, instead of down to the 25, they just kick it out of the end zone, it gets moved to the 30. I think we're going to have to see whether the other teams are actually going to try to kick it, or if we're going to see kind of more of the status quo where the kickoff's just kicked out of bounds and out of the back of the end zone. Am I concerned with the coverage? I mean, not really. The Colts didn't give up any touchdowns. Yeah, they gave up a return here or there, but I think that's also that's prone to happen with these new kickoff rules. That's why they've been put in place, to try to encourage longer returns. Drake, I don't know. What do you think? Are you concerned really with the special teams coverage of the Colts? Because in my opinion, I think it's okay. I think it's okay. Are the Colts going to have the best special teams in the NFL? Probably not, but I don't think it's going to be detrimental when they're one of the worst teams either.
Oh yeah, and across the board, I think that you got when you're just talking about the specialists, like you've got, well, Matt Gay, I think he's high level, one of the highest level kickers. Okay, the guy's still, I understand he struggled at times. He still won the Colts a couple games last year. Okay, so then you've got Rigoberto Sanchez, fantastic. I think that Dallas Flowers and Anthony Gould are going to be great returners. But yeah, I mean, I think Grant Stewart, I think Ashton Doolin. I think of guys like that when I think of the special teams, and I think of them flying down the field before these new rules. So now you got to think about standing still until that ball hits the hands. Like, I mean, it's totally different. Like, so I think you're going to see some teams a little bit confused on how to approach it at first, but as time goes on, you're going to see way better, more crisp execution. I think that the Colts are just like every other team right now. They're just trying to figure out, how the hell do we approach this and keep huge plays from coming out of it.
Yeah, and in general, I know we always I think fans put a little bit more stock into preseason games than they actually should. Preseason games really don't mean much. You don't see much out of preseason games either. And when I was watching in practice, the coverage unit seemed fine to me. I really didn't see any glaring weakness. But Paul, really appreciate the question there, buddy. And as always, thank you so much for all of your support. All right, Drake, we've basically gone through most of the big names and given stat line predictions. Now let's talk about what happens after the season, and specifically Pro Bowls, and to cap off this kind of the stat line prediction. So I want to know, how many Pro Bowlers do you think the Colts are going to have, if any? Who those Pro Bowlers would be, and then if there are any off-season awards like MVP, Offensive Defensive Player of the Year, a Defensive Rookie of the Year, whatever. Do you think any Colts players take home that hardware, or Shane Steichen in the case of Coach of the Year?
I didn't even think about that. Let's see. So I think Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor's a Pro Bowler. I think Quentin Nelson's a Pro Bowler. Bernard Ryman will be a Pro Bowler.
Ooh, Bernard Ryman. Okay. I didn't have that one on my list.
Yeah, I think he's really going to take just continue to leap. Ryan Kelly will play efficient, but he'll somehow miss the Pro Bowl in a weird way. Michael Pittman will get a Pro Bowl because he'll just make so many explosive plays. And I think that's it. I think Richardson will probably miss it. But defensively, DeForest Buckner, give me Zaire Franklin because for no other reason, he'll lead the freaking league in tackles. And then Kenny Moore. So
that was a lot. I didn't even keep track, but you had at least 6 or 7.
I think one year they had 8. So I think they led the league not long ago. But yeah, that's like 6 or 7. So.
Okay. Hey, that's fair. Do you think anybody takes home some extra hardware outside of Pro Bowls?
I think if the Colts even make the playoffs, I think I think Steichen wins Coach of the Year, and I think that Leatu Latu wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. I also think that there's a chance Anthony Richardson could win Comeback Player of the Year. I'm just saying.
Okay, I don't hate that.
He had an awful injury. I'm just saying.
I don't hate that at all. And Stats Matt is saying Defensive Rookie of the Year for Latu, AR with Comeback Player of the Year, and then Steichen Coach of the Year. He also says Pro Bowlers in Buck, Kenny, Zaire, Pitt, Quentin, and Jonathan Taylor. And I'm close to that. I do have 6 Pro Bowlers for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going Jonathan Taylor with that bounce back year. I think he makes it. DeForest Buckner and Quentin Nelson, perennial Pro Bowlers. I think you have them on there. Ryan Kelly always makes the Pro Bowl for the AFC, still one of the best centers in the AFC. And then I have 2 guys that are getting their first Pro Bowl nod. Zaire Franklin, I think it's time. And I think the league knows more about Zaire Franklin. If he leads the league in tackles again and it gets some more turnovers, I think Zaire Franklin gets his first Pro Bowl. And then Michael Pittman Jr. For my stat line, if he gets 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns, and the Colts are good and relevant, I think Michael Pittman gets that first Pro Bowl. He may not get it originally. He may be an alternate, and it may come a little bit later. But I still think that Michael Pittman Jr. does get his first Pro Bowl as well. I'm going Latu with Defensive Rookie of the Year. I really think that's a solid pick. And then I am going with Anthony Richardson as Comeback Player of the Year. If you can go out there and throw and get almost 30 touchdowns, I think Comeback Player of the Year is in the discussion. I don't think Shane Steichen's going to get Coach of the Year because, unfortunately, I think he's going to get he might finish second or third, but I think that DeMeco Ryans, with all the hype around the Texans, I think DeMeco Ryans ends up getting Coach of the Year. But Drake, now it's time to give our record prediction. And we talked about this on Bleacher Report literally a few hours ago. So if you guys saw that stream, you kind of know what we're going to say. But Drake, what is your final record prediction for the Colts in 2024? Do you think they make the playoffs? And if so, what seed do you think the Colts have?
So I said 11-6 with a 3-3 record in the division. So it'd be like I remember you mentioned a 5, I mentioned a 7. So it'd be one of those seeds, but I think it's completely possible. I think they will make the playoffs. I really do. I think that the schedule especially gets softer in the second half of the year. Mm-hmm. Now the first 5 or 6 games, you're like all the way up to week 12 when they're playing Detroit. So the Colts have to get through the grinder, but if they can get through that relatively unscathed and even in a 500 record, I mean, you can finish 11 wins. So
yeah, I've got the Colts going 11-6 as well. I do have them finishing second in the division to the Houston Texans. I think the Texans go 11-6 as well, but I think the Texans end up getting them by a tiebreaker. So I do have them at 11-6, but I do have the Colts as the 5th seed in the AFC with that 11-6. Guys, I think that ends up giving the Colts and setting the Colts up for a 4-5 matchup with the Houston Texans. I really do. The 3rd match of the year, and I'm calling it right now. I think the Colts beat the Texans in that wild card round. Now, after that, whoever they're facing, whether it's Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, who knows then? But I I'm going to go on record and say I think the Colts beat the Texans in the wild card round and make it to the divisional round of the playoffs and make some noise and try to play spoiler in the AFC.
That, I mean, if you can actually, I mean, I remember 2018 it was where the Colts played the Texans and then they play them in the freaking wild card round and they beat it. I mean, it was just a crazy, that does not happen often. So if that happens with CJ Stroud versus Anthony Richardson, oh, please sign me up for that. That sounds great.
I think it's going to be a fun year, regardless, just watching the growth of Anthony Richardson, the ups and downs. It's going to be a lot of fun to cover, first of all, but it's going to be fun to see the progression of this team and how they bounce back, because there's going to be some times where this team isn't very good, and there's going to be some times where they have a game that really looks bad. So it's going to be fun and interesting to see how they bounce back from it and how these young players really grow because of it. But I think with how the schedule is laid out, the Colts do have some key games at home as well in all of this. I think 11-6 is very possible for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, hell, the Colts went 9-8 last year with Gardner Minshew at quarterback and without Jonathan Taylor for half the season. So if you have a fully healthy JT and a fully healthy Anthony Richardson, 11-6 is not out of the realm of possibility for the Indianapolis Colts. So Drake, let's talk about the injury report, because I know we had some questions earlier about this, and the injury report and the injuries will become more clear when we talk to you guys on Thursday after the Colts have practiced a few times this week. But as of right now, where things stand, obviously Josh Downs is the highest profile injury with that high ankle sprain. Shane Steichen did speak to the media today and did say that he's progressing well, but he didn't have an official update on Josh Downs. We'll see if he's out there practicing on Wednesday. Drake, in my honest opinion, if Josh Downs is not practicing on Wednesday, he's not going to play, because he's been out. That Wednesday will be the 4-week mark since he injured his ankle, and he's going to need a little bit of ramp up time as well to see if he make sure that ankle is good to go. So if he's not out there practicing on Wednesday, at least in a limited capacity, I would probably say that the odds of him playing on Sunday are relatively low.
Yeah, and that would be a killer. I mean, you want Josh Downs out there, and he's going to bring so much to your short passing game, and you've got a consistent, assured receiver. So I think you would see some snaps bumped up to AD Mitchell's, ranks. I think that he would definitely have to see the field more.
Yeah, Mitch. If Josh Downs can't go, then Mitchell will be the primary receiver there in the slot. It was also revealed today that Matt Gay is dealing with a groin injury, so that could contribute to why he hasn't been at his best in the preseason. Shane Steichen did say that is why the Colts signed Spencer Schrader back to the practice squad to have him on hand just in case Matt Gay cannot go. So I think it's up in the air right now if Matt Gay is able to go on Sunday. If there's any possibility that groin injury could affect Matt Gay on Sunday, I think Spencer Schrader probably gets the nod, Drake, just because of how close this game probably is going to be on Sunday between these two teams. Unless Matt Gay has full confidence, and he could potentially even injure it worse if he goes out there. So I think it's too close to call whether Matt Gay plays or not. I'm sure he's going to try to do everything he can to go out there and play. But if not, the Colts do have Spencer Schrader on the practice squad, who performed relatively well in the preseason for the team.
Yeah, but you really want Matt Gay.
Definitely.
You want Matt Gay badly, because the game is going to probably be close, and it's probably going to come down to a kick from either Kaimi Fairbairn or freaking Matt Gay / Spencer Schrader. Now, listen, do you want Spencer Schrader to be kicking when the game is on the line, or Matt Gay? Okay, I know there's been detractors, but no. I really hope Matt Gay can go for the
Colts.
mean,
that's a very good point. You could look at the Baltimore game last year as
you don't win without him.
Exactly. You don't win that game without him. I was at that game. Fantastic. Hey, by the way, you couldn't have asked for a more Baltimore-esque game. It was rainy. It was gray. It was the perfect weather that you would expect in Baltimore. And Matt Gay turned out to be the MVP that day. Some other injuries, obviously, we'll be monitoring Dallas Flowers this week in his hamstring injury. Shane Steichen already said that he expects Flowers to go on Sunday without any setbacks, and it was minor. And then Tanner Bortolini is still nursing that toe injury. Not sure if he'll be able to go. If not, Danny Pinter will take over as that starting center, or I'm sorry, the backup center in case Ryan Kelly gets hurt. But obviously, all eyes, Drake, are going to be on Josh Downs and Matt Gay this week, and to see if either one of those guys ends up suiting up for week 1.
Yeah, and I mean, I go right back to Josh Downs. I mean, you could probably get by with a kicker. You want Matt Gay, but man, I want AD Mitchell and Josh Downs on the same field. I don't want Josh Downs on the sideline. So hoping he can get back to square one before Wednesday, like you said, because after that, it's pretty much inevitable that he's going to sit.
Exactly. Let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors before we let these good people finish off their Labor Day. First one up, we already talked about the Colts working out Leonard Fournette earlier, but the Colts also worked out some other players as well. They ended up working out Joshua Bledsoe, Stephen Gilmore, the younger brother of Stephon Gilmore. I know Colts fans know him well. Hassan Hall, Kelvin Joseph, Kai Blue Kelly, a cornerback, Zonovan Knight, and even Akello Witherspoon. Akello Witherspoon is a veteran cornerback that we've been talking about as potentially the Colts signing the past couple of years in free agency, because he really fits that Gus Bradley type of cornerback and would be a really good fit in this system. So the Colts are still doing their due diligence, in particular at the running back position and at the cornerback position, looking to find depth at those two spots.
Yeah, and I think that when you talk about Akello Witherspoon, I mean, that would be an awesome signing, because you're talking about a guy that's coming off of a career year. He started all 17 games. He had 3 interceptions. I mean, that'd be a great signing. That's a guy who could start right away.
Exactly. And then the final player of those 9 that the Colts worked out ended up signing with the Colts practice squad, and that is David Long. David Long Jr., was the one who ended up signing to the Colts practice squad, and is bringing some depth to a secondary that right as of right now, still, Drake, only 5 cornerbacks on the active roster. But tell me a little bit about David Long. You put out the news on horseshoehuddle.com. What do you think that David Long Jr. brings to this Colts team, albeit that he is on the practice squad?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a guy who actually was able to he's got 66 career games. I mean, he's at 12 starts. He brings valuable experience and could help young talents like Juju Brents and Jalen Jones. Now, he's also seen a Super Bowl championship when he was with the Rams, and that was his best season. He had like 40 tackles that year. I think he had like 2 or 3 interceptions, or he had his lone interception that season. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy that can help you prepare on a high level. He's going to push every one of your receivers to the brink. And hey, if you do really have to dip into the practice squad, he's a pretty solid veteran if you have to get a spot start for a few games, or a spot, kind of role, if you will. So I like it. I like the addition. I still would like a more proven cornerback like Akello Witherspoon to be signed to the roster. But hey, you know what? You got to shore up that practice squad, and you got to prepare for every single game. And this is how you do it, is by signing guys like Long.
Yeah, 66 career games, has starting experience. I mean, you don't know. He probably isn't going to have played that big of an impact. But again, if something happens to this team or something happens to the cornerback room, you're going to need to have someone that can come in and offer you some starting experience, can help on special teams as well. And I think David Long Jr. can do that and add some special teams ability as well. But Drake, we're into week 1. The Colts have a lot of high expectations. I think not only internally, but the Colts fans have some expectations for this team moving forward as well. It's going to be interesting to see because you don't want to have too high of expectations thinking this team is a bona fide Super Bowl contender. However, I do think that as long as injuries, you don't receive injuries or have injuries fall on guys like Richardson and Taylor, this team has a lot of potential. And I think with Steichen leading this group, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what all this team can accomplish this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be completely dependent upon Anthony Richardson staying healthy. We just have to keep saying that. It's going to get old. Everyone's going to get sick of hearing it. But guess what? Every single week that he's healthy, you're going to hear people say, well, he's got to stay healthy this week. Like it's just going to keep going. So as long as Richardson stays healthy, the young core on defense and offense continue to develop together, and the veterans continue to just do their thing. The guys like Moore and Buckner, I just don't see why they can't win at least 10 games and make the playoffs, man. I potentially even win the AFC South. Do I think that'll happen? Me and Andrew both think they're finishing second, but hell, you're just a win away in that division from taking it. So who knows?
Yeah, 2024 is going to be a really fun season, and Lamar G is going to close us out here with a super chat. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, brother. Really do appreciate it. Lamar says, Will Mallory is going to have a breakout season. Anthony Richardson is going to dominate, but sputter in certain matchups this season, and the Colts hit the lottery with Latu. I'm interested to see what Will Mallory can do and the opportunities that Will Mallory can receive with this team, especially with Jelani Woods going down, Drake.
Yeah, and Will Mallory is the most explosive tight end on the roster right now. So, I mean, I think that the sky's the limit for what Steichen can do with him as a pass catcher. He's got solid route running. He's faster than most of his matchups, so we'll see.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Lamar, for your support. And it's going to be fun to see what this Colts team can do in 2024. And that's our show for this evening. Guys, really, really appreciate all the love and support and tuning in tonight. We had a lot of super chats and super stickers. Want to give a shout out to Truitt, Yim, Spooks Hill Joe, Paul Wilson, Scotty Colt, Logan Schmidt, and Lamar. Thank you guys all so much for all of your super chats. Really appreciate all of your support. And if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials. I said them at the beginning of the episode, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI, and then subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so your notifications are on and you never miss a single episode, whether it's from myself and Drake or from Noah with the Shoehorn Podcast. You're able to catch them all. And if you can't, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you subscribe. Give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, we've wrote some things out there on horseshoehuddle.com over the Labor Day weekend, but you in particular have some really good stuff out there. Tell the people what they need to go check out.
Yeah, so I did one that I'm really excited about called 3 Possible Diamonds in the Rough on the 53-man roster, and I'm going to spoil one of them. It's Dalton Tucker, okay? So, that's one of them. But then analytics expert predicted the Colts to finish with a losing record. The Colts, of course, made some transactions and stuff like that. So go check out everything on Indianapolis Colts on SI, because even though there wasn't a lot of news happening, we as a channel still put out plenty of content for you guys.
Yeah. Definitely. So definitely go check those out. And for myself, I've got a piece coming out tomorrow on Michael Pittman Jr. Michael Pittman Jr. last week was named a captain of the team for the very first time. And while that may not seem like a huge deal to some, Michael Pittman, it was a huge deal to Michael Pittman Jr. And he explained why. A very, very open and honest conversation with Michael Pittman Jr. So you'll want to check that out, as well as everything else, like Drake said, on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Thursday night live to break down Colts, Texans, and the Week 1 matchup. We'll dive into both sides of the ball for the Indianapolis Colts, give our X factors, and give our prediction of who comes out on top in Week 1. It's going to be a hell of an episode, guys. So enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you right back here on Thursday night to break down and get all set for Week 1 in Lucas Oil Stadium.